questioner for 6 minutes, please, and that's Ms. Vecchio.
Thank you very much, Chair. And to begin, I would really like to thank you, Dr. Williams. As a resident of Ontario, I imagine the last 320 days, you have probably had no sleep. And I would really like to commend you to the work. I know that I am fortunate to have both Dr. Mackey and Dr. Locke in the southwestern Ontario and London Middlesex area. So I recognize what an effort that you are putting forward, and I do greatly appreciate it. Just a few questions for you specifically. We've obviously had two by-elections in Ontario, specifically under the federal government. There was one in York and then one in Toronto specific. Has there been anything that's come out of those centres that could be elected or that could be linked to the election? Are there any concerns of holding those by-elections back in November?
Thank you. And through the chair, we had asked for our local health unit to document that. We have not seen any impacts related to that. So we were pleasantly surprised that it went very smoothly, and we could not identify any exacerbation of cases related to those events, and have been attributed to the locations of the various scrutineers, et cetera. So it was a well-run process.
That's fantastic to hear. Thank you for that good news. What were some of the restrictions? I assume that Elections Canada was speaking to you very frequently, or speaking to the people in the Toronto area frequently on this. But what are some of the suggestions that were made to ensure that the voters, the candidates and their teams, as well, of course, of all of the staff that are going to be there, how did we ensure that they were safe? What were some of the guidelines that you provided?
So a lot of the guidelines, of course, are stipulated by the local medical officer of health, namely a lot with Toronto Public Health, through Dr. Eileen Davila and their team, to make sure that they were following the standards and protocols that were in fact during their time, which I think they're in the, we called modified level 2, stage 2, before they moved into the red zone and now subsequently into the lockdown zone. So even now their standards have shifted a bit, but they were asked to do the proper minimalizing of gatherings, indoor and outdoor, as well as proper distancing and masking, and limiting the access points, as well as ongoing, as I've noted in my comments already, cleaning of surfaces and keeping people moving through, so there wasn't congregation of larger numbers in any setting. So they would have taken those from their medical officer that was specific to the zone that they found themselves in.
Excellent. When we were going through that, were there any rapid tests or anything like that Elections Canada had worked with you to make sure that people were safe? Was there anything available at the time? And if so, would you be able to have used those?
We didn't use any rapid testing at that time. We still had lots of capacity in our daily testing through our assessment centers, which are in each of those locations. Mostly because we were putting our confidence in the PCR test. We've been doing a lot of working through of the various models of rapid testing. We're trying to use those in areas where we can't, say, to geography, move the test through quick enough to get people, so there's turnaround time is adequate. Those locations are very central, so we didn't have to worry about that. As well as we want to make sure that we had the proper quality checks in those testing methods. If you're in high zones of positivity, to use some of those tests that have less sensitivity, if you may, then you have a certain rate of false negatives, which would be not what we desire. So you have to put in testing protocols that would overcome those. So you want to use them in the right areas with the right group at the right time, administered by the proper experts, because some are changing from the nasopharyngeal swab to intranasal, buccal, and oral. And then we're testing also some saliva mouthwash type methods as well. So there's a lot of new technology coming in, but we didn't use them for those by-elections.
Excellent. Thank you. You mentioned when you're talking about long-term care homes, I think that's one thing that all of the members on this committee are very concerned about, looking at the long-term care homes, looking at those who are most vulnerable and disabled, to make sure that they are safe. And you indicated that we should screen those coming to the long-term care homes. What would that screening look like? Would it be those types of tests that you were just referring, like the I don't know if it's sublingual, subbuccal, those different things? I take it that's just the swab of the inside of your cheek, perhaps. I'm not sure exactly. But would those be easy to administer? And do you feel that we must ensure that all Elections Canada, let's start with the long-term care homes, but ensuring that everybody is tested or has those types of screening done? And then how can we do that at the larger picture as well?
So our testing in our long-term care facilities is of of major concern to us. We're continuing to increase the security around the long-term care facilities where we have high levels of transmission in some communities. There's more and more cases coming in, usually through the staff, volunteers, and essential visitors. So we're putting in strident measures to make sure that everyone, first of all, with the security guard in some of the lockdown zones, that the person is asked about history of signs and symptoms. They have to show proof of having had a test done, not just attestation anymore. We're going to go over to show that you've had a test in the last week. So we're going to weekly testing. We're talking about whether we would have to go up to even twice a week tests with some of the rapid tests in there. We have not yet implemented that, but regardless of the steps we put in, there still seems to be infections coming into these locations. And once it gets in there, it spreads quite quickly. So we have to put as many barriers around them as we can. So I think if you're asking people coming in from the outside, if you're not a staff member and you're not an essential visitor that has registered and has been noted in the log, and you haven't got your proof of testing, you will not be allowed to enter the facility. Whereas in some zones out in the green, it's less stringent, and the yellow. So there's a variation across the province, but we're trying to put these measures in, and if we're going to implement a rapid test methodology, we're going to have to make sure that it's done with the proper sequential timing to ensure that we rule out any misgivings of the test as in false negatives. So
Thank you.
right now you have to get those other tests done.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. I
Dr.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you to both of you.